Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast in Washington, D.C., I'm the newsman, Sam Sachs. It's that Friday show. Good morning to everyone who was not indicted yesterday. Not so fast, Donald. Yep, we begin this morning with the damn funniest thing to happen so far this year. Trump got indicted. That's the decision from a grand jury assembled by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. The specific charges are still sealed, but they are related to the alleged campaign finance crimes associated with Trump's hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. And there are reports that there could be dozens of charges related to falsifying documents. There have been 45 dudes who've been president of the United States and then left office, and not a single one of them has ever been indicted. Probably 2/3 of them should have been. Actually, probably more than that. But as fate would have it, it's Trump who is the first. Also, the first guy under Secret Service protection to be indicted. So that'll be weird. Trump is expected to turn himself in on Tuesday next week, right alongside his Secret Service detail. He'll be arrested, booked. We'll all get to see that mugshot. And there'll be a bunch of weepy NYPD officers saying, "Sir, yes, sir, please, sir, right this way, sir, thank you, sir," the whole entire time. And then Trump will most likely be let go afterward, and we'll see if he can wriggle his way out of this one too. And honestly, there is a decent chance he might. Of all the awful shit Trump has done, hiding hush money payments to a porn star is kind of bottom of the barrel stuff. And also, the courts have made it increasingly difficult to bust elite politicians on campaign finance and public corruption crimes. John Edwards, Robert McDonnell, Bob Menendez, all indicted, all later exonerated by the courts. But ultimately, this is likely to be only the first indictment Trump faces, not the last. A grand jury was established in Georgia to look into allegations of Trump trying to overturn the election in that state in 2020. It will be ultimately up to the Fulton County District Attorney to file charges. And then there's the ongoing federal investigation with the special prosecutor looking into Trump's crimes related to January 6th. Former Vice President Mike Pence was just ordered to testify in that probe. So it could be a long summer for the former president. Lots of wriggling. Trump is reportedly making calls to Republican politicians to secure their support. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy called the indictment an outrageous abuse of power. He said he will direct relevant committees in the House to investigate the DA's office. Florida Governor Meatball Ron DeSantis, who is set to rival Trump in the GOP presidential primary and has been getting hammered relentlessly by the former president, came to Trump's defense on Twitter. He claimed that Florida would not cooperate with any extradition attempts. Notably, DeSantis threatened a constitutional crisis only after Trump's legal team said he would voluntarily turn himself in. Senator Ted Cruz called it a tragic day for democracy, and Senator J.D. Vance fired off this bizarre tweet, quote, "A week ago, a video circulated of a lunatic harassing a family on a New York subway. He hurled racial slurs," the family was white, "and threatened them. Alvin Bragg, who's the district attorney, thinks that man should walk free and Donald Trump should go to jail for a fake misdemeanor. It's despicable." Notice how Vance had to add the parenthetical about the family being white, because the only type of racism that's allowed to be discussed in conservative circles is when it's against white people. Anyway, this is merely the first step in a long legal process that could end in total acquittal for Trump or end in him going to jail. If it is the latter, there is precedent for guys running for president from a prison cell. Eugene Debs, a socialist, did it in 1920. He was thrown in jail on bogus Espionage Act charges, though, and still got nearly 1 million votes, which was a lot back then, about 3% of the vote. But the candidate more relevant to Trump's situation is probably corrupt Congressman James Traficant. The Ohio Republican was kicked out of Congress in the early 2000s for corruption and bribery, was tried and found guilty, but ran for re-election for his seat in the House while incarcerated at the Allenwood Penitentiary. He got about 15% of the vote. In other troubling signs for U.S. democracy, very cool system of government we have here when half the country might lose access to essential healthcare services because one dipshit reactionary judge in Texas decided so. On Thursday, federal judge Reed O'Connor struck down a provision of the Affordable Care Act that requires insurance providers to cover preventative treatments like screenings for cancer, diabetes, and depression. O'Connor is a right-wing judge appointed by George W. Bush. He attempted to kill off the entirety of the Affordable Care Act back in 2018 in a ruling so absurdly irrational that the Supreme Court later struck it down 7-2. Now he's honing in on a small piece of the law, but one that could affect more than 100 million Americans. There is a loose legal reasoning behind the decision that a board of experts known as the U.S. Preventive Task Force, which submits recommendations for what sort of preventative treatment should be covered, is actually unconstitutional because its members weren't confirmed by the Senate or appointed by the president. Plaintiff in the case, a Texas business owner and contributor to Republicans, a guy named Stephen Hotze, also made the argument that the law violates his religious freedom to be mandated to provide preventative HIV medication, which is a deeply messed up argument to make, but one that was already successful before this very same judge last year. In that case, O'Connor ruled that the task force could not require insurance providers to cover pre-exposure prophylaxis because it's unconstitutional on religious freedom grounds. On Thursday, the judge ruled that the entire task force is now unconstitutional. The ruling applies nationwide, and it's immediate, barring an appeal from the Justice Department and the granting of an injunction until a higher court can hear the matter. In all likelihood, this issue will end up before the Supreme Court. And ultimately, the courts are a bigger threat to U.S. democracy than anything going on in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. This week, the State Department hosted a so-called Summit for Democracy. It was a virtual conference that featured speeches from heads of state around the world to promote democracy, I guess. I don't know. It's unclear because some of the speakers did not actually represent functioning democracies, namely Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Yep, just days after mass protests forced Netanyahu to delay his plans to seize control of the judiciary, and after he agreed to give his far-right nationalist allies in government a private militia to attack Palestinians who are already denied political rights under an apartheid system of government, after all that, the Biden administration invited Netanyahu to speak at the event anyway. And after Netanyahu was finished, he ended the week the same way he started it, with more repression. On Thursday, Palestinians gathered in the West Bank and Gaza Strip to commemorate Land Day. It marks the day 47 years ago when Palestinians rose up to protest their homes and land being taken away by Israeli settlers. Each year, thousands of protesters in the Gaza Strip convene at the border security fence that imprisons them within Gaza. They rally against the ongoing system of apartheid, the economic blockade they face, and the continued confiscation of Palestinian lands. And each year, Israeli security forces attack them during it. Between 2018 and 2019, Palestinians carried out sustained protests at the security fence every Friday in what was dubbed the Great March of Return. They were repeatedly shot at, and over the course of the year, Israeli forces killed more than 200 people, including almost 50 children. MMN correspondent Mohammed El Safi attended this year's Land Day commemorations. He captured this footage of Israeli security forces lobbing tear gas at demonstrators. Local reports are that hundreds were injured due to smoke inhalation and 3 people were shot. But there are signs that patience with the Netanyahu regime is starting to wear thin among some U.S. lawmakers. This week, Jewish Currents reported on a letter being circulated around Congress, gathering signatures, that calls on the Biden administration to undertake a shift in U.S. policy toward the Israeli apartheid state. It was written by Rep. Jamal Bowman and Senator Bernie Sanders and already has more than 10 lawmakers signed onto it. The letter states, quote, "The Israeli government's actions are in clear violation of international law and commitments made to the U.S. Its agenda will further devastate Palestinian communities in heightened tension with violent consequences for both Palestinians and Israelis. Only clear steps to challenge political conditions will pave the way for peace." The lawmakers demanded an investigation into weapons shipments to Israel to determine if they violate U.S. law, primarily the Arms Export Act, which prohibits the sale of defense items that are then used for human rights abuses. Quote, "We call on your administration to ensure that all future foreign assistance to Israel, including weapons and equipment, is not used in support of gross violations of human rights, including by strengthening end-use monitoring and financial tracking. We ask that you respond with a detailed plan as to how the administration plans to achieve that goal." Meanwhile, in related news, Netanyahu also capped off an eventful week by bombing Syria for like the 6th time this month. The Israelis' ongoing military campaign against Syria has evaded scrutiny from Western governments more concerned about the territorial integrity in places like Ukraine.
Una mamá, hay un dolor pues que nunca pasa. No hay remedio para eso.
Para mí es duro estar esperando a mi hijo todos los días en mi casa.
Ni porque te dan ampollas, ni porque te dan comida, no pasa.
Las madres están presentes. 1, 2 y 3. Las madres otra vez.
Es el dolor de una madre.
These stories were stolen from people because they're stories about another way that the world could be, another way that power structures could be.
When you think about a massacre, you think about people who can't defend themselves. That wasn't the case. It was a battle. Both people had guns and both people pulled them out.
You'll see the bullets still in the wall from 1920.
The Maitland Massacre was this slogan that was pushed forward by the coal companies, and it kind of stuck.
It's dangerous for private industry to talk about what happens when they take things too far. It's dangerous for them.
Hey folks, it's time for Rich Dicks. Thanks for those nominations on social media. Crystal Britches filling in for Rona this week to nominate all the damn landlords. Thank you. Also got a nomination here for Warren Buffett, who owns BNSF Railroads, which owns a train that just derailed in Minnesota, releasing toxic gas and prompting evacuation orders. And we got a bunch of nominations for Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, following his appearance before a Senate committee this week, where he tried to defend his company's repeated violations of labor law. No doubt Schultz is the most deserving rich dick of the week, but we covered that hearing extensively on yesterday's show, and I just don't have much to add. So, in the pursuit of mixing things up a bit, I went with the second most deserving person of the dishonors, someone who is always reliably bad. That's right. This week's rich dick is Elon Musk. So I'm losing my blue check mark on Twitter tomorrow, and not mad about it at all. Nope. Honestly, not mad. Okay, maybe a little mad, but ultimately it doesn't matter because the website is dead anyway. Elon Musk killed it, and for that reason, he's the rich dick of the week. Starting on April 1st, all legacy verified accounts will lose their verification. And moving forward, it will only be people who pay Musk $8 a month to subscribe to Twitter Blue who will get a verification checkmark. Unless you pay up, your tweets will be algorithmically throttled, you'll lose security features, and you won't be able to vote in Twitter polls. And as Musk claims that this new system will level the playing field for all users, Platformer reported that Twitter is also secretly boosting certain accounts, including some of the worst people on the website, like reactionaries Ben Shapiro and Glenn Greenwald. Musk is turning Twitter into a pay-to-play operation, with the only people willing to pay being the most insufferable dipshits on the internet. The latest brilliant idea coming from the brain genius who overpaid to buy Twitter, then watched the website lose half of its value in months, with ad revenue declining by 89% since he took over. And if Musk hoped that paid subscriptions will replace that ad revenue, he's wrong again. Already, major news outlets are saying they will not pay for verified status, and there's little indication that other legacy verified accounts will cough up money to pay Musk. I know that I sure as hell won't. According to a report from Mashable, of the 420,000 legacy verified accounts, only about 6,000 have signed up for Twitter Blue. Right now, there are just under 450,000 people who are paid subscribers to Twitter, and Mashable found that they're not exactly power users. Around half have fewer than 1,000 followers, almost 1 in 5 have fewer than 100 followers, and a couple thousand have 0 followers. No offense to the lobies out there, but these aren't the sorts of accounts that brought value to Twitter in the first place. They're mostly right-wing chuds, crypto scammers, and Tesla dorks. Twitter is hemorrhaging money, and Musk's plans to reverse it by relying on the worst people to pay for Twitter will be a disaster. We can all see how this is going to end. As Natasha Lomas wrote at TechCrunch this week, quote, "If the point is simply pure destruction, building a chaos machine by removing a source of valuable information from our connected world where groups of all stripes could communicate and organize, and replacing that with a place of parity that rewards insincerity, time wasting, and the worst forms of communication in order to degrade the better half, then Musk has done a remarkable job in very short order. Truly, it's an amazing act of demolition. But, well, $44 billion can buy you a lot of wrecking balls. That our system allows wealth to be turned into a weapon to nuke things of broad societal value is one hard lesson we should take away from the wreckage of downed turquoise feathers." Hopefully, we can all find each other again in some other corner of the internet. But for now, Elon Musk, this week's rich dick. Friends, the show ends this morning with a sunrise from Washington State. It was sent in by Brendan in Covington, looking out at Mount Rainier. Enjoy. Thanks, Brendan. Show's over. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and definitely subscribe to Means TV if you haven't already. One day, capitalism, it's going to fall. I promise. Until then, though, we're going to be right here. See you next week.